The massive council chamber on Nexus Prime buzzed with alien voices. Representatives from dozens of species filled the curved seats that rose toward the crystal dome ceiling. Admiral Kevin Martinez sat in the human section, his dark uniform simple, compared to the glowing robes and metallic armor worn by other delegates. Martinez watched as holographic displays showed ship designs from across the galaxy. The Altarian vessels looked like living crystals that pulsed with inner light. Zalarian warships resembled flowing metal sculptures with no visible weapons. The Corvin fleet appeared as geometric shapes that seemed to bend space around them. Then came humanity's fleet display. The chamber fell silent. Where other species showed elegant curves and exotic materials, human ships looked like floating metal boxes. Thick armor plating covered every surface. Missile pods stuck out at odd angles. Gun turrets sat in rows along the hulls like ancient fortifications. High Commander Zexthol of the Altarian Empire stood up. His crystalline form caught the chamber's light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice like wind chimes, "we face the greatest threat our galaxy has known. The Void Swarm approaches with technology that devours worlds. We must use our most advanced weapons." He gestured toward the human display with one of his four arms. "While we respect our human allies, their military technology appears limited. Energy weapons from the previous millennium, projectile launchers that require physical ammunition, armor plating instead of energy shields." Murmurs filled the chamber. Commander Lisa Brooks, sitting beside Martinez, felt her jaw tighten. She had served on human warships for 15 years and knew their capabilities better than any alien ever would. The Zalarian delegate rose next. Her form flowed like liquid metal as she spoke. "The Void Swarm adapts to any technology it encounters. We need weapons that operate beyond normal spacetime. Our quantum disruptors and reality anchors represent the cutting edge of military science." She looked toward the human section with what might have been sympathy. "Perhaps our human friends could assist with supply operations. Their ships appear sturdy enough for transport duties." Martinez remained perfectly still. Brooks knew that expression. In 30 years of military service, she had learned to recognize when the Admiral was thinking dangerous thoughts. The slight narrowing of his eyes. The way his fingers drummed once against his chair's armrest. Other species might mistake it for nervousness, but Brooks knew better. The Corvin representative spoke through a translation device that made his words sound mechanical. "Analysis of human military doctrine shows reliance on kinetic weapons. Such technology proved ineffective against Void Swarm scouts in the Outer Rim. Our gravitational wave cannons offer superior penetration capabilities." More species joined the discussion. Each one presented weapons that sounded like science fiction to human ears. Temporal accelerators that aged targets to dust. Dimensional rifts that sent matter into parallel universes. Consciousness disruptors that could shut down artificial intelligence. The hegemony's war leader, a massive creature with 6 legs and armor-like skin, pounded his staff against the floor. "The swarm consumed 3 of our border worlds before we drove them back. Only our plasma fusion arrays could damage their hulls. Primitive kinetic weapons barely scratched their surface." Brooks watched as species after species dismissed human capabilities. They spoke about humanity like parents discussing a child's finger paintings. Cute, but not really art. Finally, Council Chairman Vexhai called for order. The ancient being's energy form flickered between colors as he addressed the assembly. "We have heard from all major military powers. The threat assessment is clear. The Void Swarm will reach the inner systems within 6 standard months." A tactical display filled the chamber's center. Red markers showed swarm positions moving toward populated worlds. Blue markers indicated allied fleet positions. The human fleet appeared as a small cluster near the supply routes. "Military assignments are as follows," Chairman Vexhai announced. "Altarian crystal fleets will form the primary battle line. Their energy weapons have the longest effective range. Zalarian ships will provide quantum disruption support. Corvin forces will anchor our flanks with gravitational weapons." Brooks felt her hands clench into fists. Every major species received frontline combat assignments based on their advanced technology. Terran Federation forces, the chairman continued, will secure supply lines and provide logistical support. Their robust ship construction makes them suitable for extended operations in dangerous space. The dismissal was complete. Humanity would play taxi driver while other species fought the real war. Admiral Martinez finally stood. The chamber quieted as delegates turned toward the human section. Chairman Vexhai, the Terran Federation accepts this assignment. His voice carried no emotion, no complaint about being relegated to support duties, no argument about human capabilities. Just simple acceptance. However, Martinez continued, I request permission for human forces to observe frontline operations. Our tactical databases could benefit from studying void swarm combat patterns. Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. The idea that humans could learn anything useful from watching superior alien fleets in action seemed amusing to them. Granted, Chairman Vexhai replied. Human observers may maintain safe distances during major engagements. As the session ended, and delegates began filing out, Brooks caught fragments of conversation in various alien languages. Her translator unit picked up words like primitive, outdated, and harmless. The Altarian High Commander approached their section. Admiral Martinez, please do not take offense at our tactical assignments. Every species contributes according to their capabilities. Martinez smiled politely. Of course, High Commander. We understand our role. Your ships are built solidly, Zexthol continued. Perfect for carrying supplies and evacuating civilians, very practical design. We try to build things that work, Martinez replied. After the aliens left, Brooks turned to her commanding officer. Admiral, permission to speak freely? Always, Lisa. They have no idea what they're dealing with, do they? Martinez's smile became genuine for the first time that day. They think our ships look primitive because they've never seen anything designed purely for war. Their vessels are built for exploration, science, and peaceful contact between species. He gathered his datapad and stood. Our ships are built for one purpose, to kill other ships and the people inside them. That's not primitive, Commander. That's specialized. Brooks followed him toward the exit. Sir, are we really going to sit in the back and watch while they get slaughtered? Martinez paused at the chamber's entrance. Around them, aliens continued discussing their advanced weapons and superior tactics. None of them paid attention to the two humans leaving. We're going to follow orders, Commander. We'll secure supply lines and observe from safe distances. His voice carried that dangerous edge again. Right up until the moment they realize they need us. The chamber doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. In 6 months, the void swarm would arrive. When it did, the galaxy would learn the difference between advanced technology and effective weapons. Martinez had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. Soon, everyone would understand why humanity had remained quiet about their true capabilities. For so long, the war was coming, and humanity was ready. The Allied fleet was dying. Captain Danny Foster watched from the USS Relentless as another Zalarian ship cracked apart under its own weapons turned against it. The swarm had adapted to every exotic technology the galaxy could produce. Energy, shields meant nothing. Quantum barriers failed. Reality itself could be twisted by the enemy. Sir, Lieutenant Amy Parker called from the weapons station. Admiral Martinez on priority channel. Foster switched to the command frequency. Martinez's face appeared on screen, and for the first time since Foster had known him, the Admiral looked angry. Not frustrated or concerned. Angry. All human vessels, Martinez began, his voice cutting through the chaos of battle communications. The Galactic Council has authorized full engagement. We are no longer observers. Foster felt his pulse quicken. Around him, his crew straightened in their chairs. Weapons free, all ships, weapons free. Martinez paused, and his expression became something that would have made ancient warriors proud. Show them what we learned from 1,000 years of killing each other. The channel closed. Foster looked at his weapons officer. Amy, bring all systems online. Yes, sir. Railguns charging. Missile tubes flooding. Point defense systems active. Across the human fleet, similar conversations were happening. On the heavy cruiser USS Devastator, Captain Helen Wright was giving orders to her gun crews. Target the largest concentration of enemy ships. Tungsten penetrators, maximum velocity. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Adams aboard the assault carrier USS Harbinger was preparing his secret weapon. Launch all combat drones. Authorization code Red 7. Tell them it's time to earn their keep. Foster watched his tactical display as human ships began moving. Where alien vessels had fought in elegant formations with graceful maneuvers, human ships moved like predators. They accelerated hard, ignoring the stress on their crews, closing distance with the enemy. First target acquired, Parker reported. Large swarm vessel, approximately 2 kilometers long. Fire when ready. The Relentless shuddered as its main railgun fired. A tungsten rod weighing several tons and moving at a significant fraction of light speed crossed the distance to the target in seconds. The projectile hit the swarm ship dead center. Unlike energy weapons that could be absorbed or deflected, the kinetic penetrator simply punched through. It tore a hole completely through the enemy vessel, venting atmosphere and debris into space. The swarm ship listed to one side, its perfect coordination broken. Direct hit, Parker shouted. Enemy vessel severely damaged. Foster smiled grimly. Reload and acquire the next target. Across the battlefield, other human ships were demonstrating why kinetic weapons had dominated Earth's battlefields for centuries. The USS Devastator fired a full broadside from its 8 railguns. 8 tungsten rods struck 8 different swarm vessels. All 8 targets were either destroyed or crippled. The swarm tried to adapt. Their hulls began shifting and changing, attempting to develop defenses against kinetic weapons. But physics doesn't negotiate. A chunk of metal moving fast enough will penetrate any armor no matter how exotic. Sir, Parker called out excitedly, the Harbinger is launching something. Foster switched his display to show the assault carrier. Hundreds of small objects were streaming from its launch bays. At first they looked like missiles. Then Foster realized what he was seeing. Combat drones. Thousands of them. Each drone was about the size of a fighter craft, but operated with artificial intelligence. Unlike alien AI systems that relied on quantum processing, human drones used hardened networks that couldn't be easily hacked or adapted against. The drone swarm moved toward the enemy with purposeful coordination. Some carried antimatter charges designed to detonate against ship hulls. Others mounted kinetic weapons scaled down for precision strikes. A few carried electromagnetic pulse generators that could disable electronics. The swarm vessels tried to jam the drone's control signals, but there were no control signals to jam. Each drone operated independently, making its own decisions based on programmed objectives. Foster watched as the first wave of combat drones reached their targets. Antimatter. Explosions lit up space like tiny suns. Where they struck swarm vessels, entire sections simply vanished. Metal that could adapt to energy weapons couldn't adapt to having its atomic structure torn apart. Captain, his communications officer reported, receiving transmission from Altarian flagship. The main screen showed High Commander Zexthol's crystalline form, but now it was flickering with what Foster recognized as hope rather than panic. Human vessels, your weapons are effective against the enemy. How is this possible? They adapted to all our technology. Foster opened a channel back. High Commander, they can adapt to exotic physics and energy manipulation. They can't adapt to basic physics. When something solid hits something else really hard, adaptation doesn't matter. On the heavy cruiser Devastator, Captain Wright was demonstrating human missile doctrine. Her ship launched a full spread of nuclear warheads, each following a different flight path. The swarm's point defense systems, designed to counter energy-based interceptors, couldn't track the chaotic variety of incoming projectiles. The missiles struck home with devastating effect. Nuclear explosions sent shockwaves through swarm formations, disrupting their perfect coordination. Even if the enemy could adapt to radiation, they couldn't adapt to the massive kinetic force of atomic explosions. Sir, Parker reported, enemy formation is beginning to break apart. They're losing cohesion. Foster could see it on his tactical display. The swarm's greatest advantage had been their perfect coordination, every ship moving as part of a single mind. But human weapons were disrupting that coordination faster than they could adapt. A damaged swarm vessel, its hull torn open by tungsten penetrators, collided with a nearby ship. The collision caused both vessels to spin out of formation, disrupting the neat geometric patterns the enemy maintained. All human ships. Admiral Martinez's voice came over the fleet channel. Press the attack. They're learning to counter our weapons, but slowly. We have maybe 20 minutes before they adapt completely. Foster's crew worked with practiced efficiency. The Relentless fired railgun after railgun shot, each tungsten rod finding its target. Their missiles, armed with various warhead types, created chaos in enemy formations. But Foster could see the swarm beginning to adapt. Some vessels were developing thicker armor plating. Others were generating kinetic barriers that slowed incoming projectiles. Their point defense was improving against human missiles. They're learning, Parker said grimly. Yes, but look at the cost, Foster replied. The space around them was filled with debris from destroyed swarm vessels. Thousands of the enemy ships had been eliminated in just 15 minutes of human engagement. The primitive kinetic weapons had achieved more than hours of alien energy attacks. Captain Helen Wright's voice came over the tactical channel. All ships, the enemy is adapting to standard kinetic weapons. Time for Plan B. Foster smiled. Every human ship captain knew what Plan B meant. Amy, load the special ammunition. Parker's grin matched his own. Yes, sir. Loading depleted uranium penetrators with antimatter cores. The swarm might learn to stop regular tungsten rods, but they would need time to adapt to projectiles that exploded with antimatter after penetrating their hulls, and time was something humanity wouldn't give them. Foster watched as the first human ship fired the new ammunition. The depleted uranium rod punched through a swarm vessel's improved armor, then detonated inside the ship. The antimatter explosion tore the enemy vessel apart from within. Target destroyed completely, Parker reported with satisfaction. Around the battlefield, human ships were demonstrating the doctrine that had made them successful in every war they had fought. When the enemy adapts to your weapons, you don't give up. You build better weapons. The swarm was learning that adaptation takes time, and in warfare time is measured in seconds. Human weapons were designed to kill quickly, before any enemy could respond. For the first time since the battle began, the tide was turning. The galaxy's primitive fleet was systematically destroying an enemy that had seemed invincible just minutes before. Foster opened a channel to all human ships. Good shooting, everyone. Let's finish this. The war was far from over, but the galaxy was learning an important lesson. Advanced technology means nothing if your enemy doesn't give you time to use it. 3 months had passed since the council meeting. Captain Danny Foster stood on the bridge of the USS Relentless, watching his tactical display with growing unease. The destroyer hung in space near the main supply depot, officially guarding transport ships carrying ammunition and food to the front lines. In reality, Foster knew they were positioned to watch the coming battle. Captain, his communications officer called out. Long-range sensors are picking up massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Foster moved to the sensor station. Lieutenant Amy Parker, his weapons officer, joined him there. The readings made Foster's blood run cold. Whatever was coming toward them was huge. How many contacts? Foster asked. Computer estimates. Over 2 million individual signatures, sir. The bridge fell silent. Every human crew member understood what that meant. The void swarm had arrived in numbers beyond anyone's worst fears. Foster opened a channel to Admiral Martinez aboard the command ship. Admiral, we're seeing massive enemy contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Martinez's voice came back steady and calm. Confirmed, Captain. All human ships are to maintain current positions and record everything. Send telemetry data to Fleet Command in real time. Understood, sir. Foster switched to the main tactical display. Across the system, Allied fleets moved into their assigned positions. The Altarian crystal ships formed a beautiful line of glowing formations. Their vessels looked like giant jewels floating in the darkness of space. Behind them, Zalarian ships flowed through space like liquid metal, their forms constantly shifting and changing. Corvin geometric vessels anchored the flanks, their strange angles seeming to bend light around them. It was an impressive sight. The combined fleets represented the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Energy weapons that could tear apart planets, shields that could stop anything, AI systems that could process millions of tactical scenarios per second. Enemy fleet dropping to sublight speed, Parker reported. Visual contact established. The Xiao. Main screen filled with an image that would haunt Foster's dreams for years to come. The void swarm stretched across space like a dark cancer. Millions of black shapes moved in perfect formation. Each ship looked like a metallic virus, angular, purposeful, and utterly alien. "They're beautiful," whispered the navigator, in a terrifying way. Foster understood what he meant. The swarm moved with a precision no biological species could match. Every ship maintained exact distance from its neighbors. When they turned as one. When they accelerated, not a single vessel fell behind. The first shots came from the Altarian line. Beams of pure energy lanced across space toward the approaching swarm. The crystal ships could generate more power than most stars. Their weapons had destroyed asteroids in previous tests. The energy beams struck swarm vessels and seemed to dim. "What happened?" Parker asked, checking her instruments. "The enemy ships absorbed the energy," Foster realized. "They're adapting to the frequency." More Altarian ships opened fire. Different types of energy weapons, particle beams, plasma bursts, ion cannons. For a moment, the space between the fleets lit up like a rainbow of destruction. The swarm kept coming, their dark hulls absorbed, each type of energy weapon after only a few hits. Whatever they were made of, it learned from every attack. "Zalarian ships engaging," reported the communications officer. The liquid metal ships began firing quantum disruptors. These weapons didn't just damage matter, they removed it from normal spacetime. Anything hit by a quantum disruptor simply ceased to exist. The first few swarm ships vanished completely. Then the others adapted. The quantum effects began hitting, some kind of barrier around the enemy vessels. Whatever technology the swarm used, it was learning to counter weapons that shouldn't be counterable. "Corvin forces opening fire with gravitational weapons," came the next report. Foster watched as space itself twisted around the swarm formation. Gravitational waves that could crush planets into balls of compressed matter struck the enemy fleet. A few dozen swarm ships crumpled like tin cans. Then something impossible happened. The surviving swarm vessels began generating their own gravitational fields. They were copying Corvin technology in real time. "Sir," Parker's voice was tight with fear, "the enemy is adapting faster than our allies can change tactics." Foster nodded grimly. The Altarians tried cycling through different energy frequencies, but the swarm adapted to each one within minutes. The Zalarians attempted to modify their quantum disruptors, but the enemy developed countermeasures almost instantly. The first Allied ship died when swarm vessels returned fire with copied Altarian energy weapons. The crystal ship's shields failed under its own technology turned against it. The beautiful vessel cracked like glass and went dark. "All human ships," Admiral Martinez's voice came over the fleet channel. "Continue observing. Record all enemy tactics and adaptation patterns." Foster wanted to charge into battle. His crew was trained for combat, not watching allies die. But orders were orders. He kept the relentless in position and watched the slaughter begin. The swarm closed distance, with terrifying speed. As they moved, they continued adapting to every weapon type thrown at them. Zalarian reality anchors that should have locked enemy ships in normal space were overcome. Corvin dimensional rifts that sent matter into parallel universes were sealed. "Shut, Captain," the communications officer called out urgently. "Distress signal from the Altarian flagship." The main screen showed High Commander Zexthol's crystal form flickering with panic. "All units, the enemy is adapting faster than projected. Request immediate tactical revision. We need new weapon types that they haven't encountered." But there was no time. The swarm had reached the main battle line. Their weapons, copies of Allied technology, began tearing through ships that had seemed invincible just hours before. Foster watched a Zalarian cruiser try to escape by shifting into quantum space. A swarm vessel followed it, somehow copying the technique perfectly. Both ships vanished from normal sensors, but only one returned. The swarm ship came back alone. "How many Allied vessels lost?" Foster asked quietly. Parker checked her displays. Over 300 confirmed destroyed. Enemy casualties and maybe a few dozen. The battle was becoming a massacre. Every tactic the Allies tried was copied and improved. Every weapon they fired was analyzed and countered. The swarm seemed to learn from each encounter, growing stronger while the Allied fleets grew weaker. "Sir," the navigator spoke up. "Admiral, Martinez is requesting all human ship commanders report to Secure Channel 7. Foster switched communications channels. Admiral Martinez's image appeared on his personal screen, along with the faces of every human captain in the fleet. "Gentlemen, ladies," Martinez began, "you're watching the galaxy's finest military technology fail against an enemy that adapts to everything. What do you think we should do about this?" Captain Helen Wright of the heavy cruiser USS Devastator spoke first. "Sir, request permission to engage the enemy." "With what weapons, Captain?" "They'll adapt to anything we throw at them, just like they did with alien technology." Wright smiled grimly. "Admiral, they can adapt to energy weapons and exotic physics, but they can't adapt to a chunk of metal moving at high speed." Foster felt a cold smile spread across his face. He understood now why they had been positioned to observe. Martinez had known this would happen. "All human ships." The Admiral's voice took on a tone Foster had never heard before. Pure, controlled anger. "Maintain position until I give the word. When we engage, we're going to show this galaxy what happens when you build weapons designed for war instead of science." The channel closed. Foster looked at his crew. Every face showed the same expression, grim satisfaction mixed with anticipation. They had watched long enough. Soon it would be their turn. The swarm continued destroying Allied ships with copied weapons and tactics, but they had never encountered humanity's approach to warfare. They had never faced weapons designed by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing. Foster checked his weapon systems one more time. Kinetic railguns loaded with tungsten penetrators, nuclear missiles with electromagnetic pulse warheads, point defense systems designed to stop incoming projectiles rather than energy beams. Everything the aliens called primitive, everything they had dismissed as obsolete. Soon the swarm would learn why humanity had stayed quiet about their true capabilities for so long. Commander Steve Collins stood on the bridge of the battleship USS Annihilator, watching his weapons officer prepare the ship's main guns. Around them, the battle raged as human forces continued their assault on the void swarm. The enemy was adapting, but slowly. Too slowly to save themselves. "Sir," the Zalarian liaison officer attached to his ship spoke up. The liquid metal being had been assigned to observe human tactics, but now it seemed genuinely confused. "Your weapons are effective, but I do not understand your tactical philosophy. Why do your ships carry so many different weapon types?" Collins turned to look at the alien. After 3 hours of combat, he was feeling generous enough to explain. "Lieutenant, what's your name again?" "I am called Flow of Stars Through Metal, but you may use the human designation Lynn, if that is easier." "All right, Lynn. You want to know the difference between our weapons and yours?" Collins gestured toward the tactical display showing both human and alien ships. "Your people build weapons to be efficient, clean, elegant. You want to disable an enemy with minimum energy expenditure." The battleship shuddered as its main railguns fired in sequence. Each shot sent a tungsten penetrator through a different swarm vessel. "We build weapons to make sure the target stops existing," Collins continued. "We don't want to disable the enemy. We want to remove any possibility that they might still be a threat." Lynn's metallic form rippled with what Collins had learned to recognize as confusion. "But that seems excessive. Surely destroying the enemy's ability to fight is sufficient." Collins laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sufficient? Lynn, let me tell you about human military history. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years before we ever left our planet. We learned some hard lessons. On the main screen, the USS Devastator was demonstrating one of those lessons. Captain Helen Wright had closed her heavy cruiser to point-blank range with a group of swarm vessels. At a distance where most alien ships would never engage, Wright was unleashing devastation. Lesson 1, Collins said, watching the Devastator's guns tear apart enemy ships. If you're going to shoot something, shoot it enough times to make sure it stays down. Wright's not just damaging those ships, she's making sure they can never be repaired or adapted into something worse. The Devastator fired its secondary guns while the main railguns reloaded. These smaller weapons use different ammunition, depleted uranium shells with explosive cores. They couldn't penetrate as deeply as the tungsten penetrators, but they created massive internal damage. Your ship carries 12 different weapon systems, Lynn observed. This seems inefficient compared to our quantum disruptors, which can be modified for any target. That's lesson 2, Collins replied. Never rely on one weapon system, no matter how advanced. The enemy will always find a way to counter it eventually. As if to prove his point, some of the swarm vessels began displaying improved armor that deflected the smaller caliber weapons. Collins wasn't concerned. He had 11 other weapon systems to choose from. Weapons officer switched to kinetic penetrators with delayed detonation cores. Target the ships with improved armor. Yes, sir. Firing solution locked. The Annihilators. Next salvo used a different approach entirely. Instead of trying to punch through the improved armor, the rounds were designed to penetrate partially, then explode inside the armor itself. The blasts tore the protective plating away, leaving the ships vulnerable to follow-up attacks. You see? Collins explained. They adapted to one weapon type, so we use another. By the time they adapt to that one, we'll be using something else. Lynn's form shifted again. But this requires carrying many different ammunition types. It must limit your tactical flexibility, Collins grinned. Lynn, human ships don't carry multiple weapon types because we have to. We carry them because we can. Look at the size of our vessels compared to yours. The alien officer's sensors focused on the tactical display. Collins was right. Human ships were significantly larger than most alien vessels. Where other species built sleek, efficient designs, human warships looked like flying fortresses. Your ships are very substantial, Lynn admitted. That's because we designed them for war, not exploration. Every cubic meter of space is dedicated to either weapons, ammunition, armor, or the systems needed to support them. We don't have science, labs or diplomatic suites or cultural exchange centers. Captain Nina Rodriguez's voice came over the tactical channel from her destroyer squadron. All ships, the enemy is adapting to kinetic weapons. Time to show them why we carry more than just guns. Collins watched as Rodriguez's ships launched their next attack. Instead of railgun rounds or missiles, they deployed something that looked like metallic clouds. What are those? Lynn asked. Nanite swarms, Collins replied with satisfaction. Self-replicating machines designed to eat metal. They're programmed to consume enemy ship hulls and reproduce using the materials they gather. The nanite clouds engulfed several swarm vessels. Within minutes, the enemy ships began developing holes in their armor as millions of tiny machines consumed them from the outside in. The swarm tried to adapt by generating electromagnetic fields to disrupt the nanites. Some of the metallic clouds dispersed, but others had been designed with shielding against such countermeasures. You have weapons that consume other ships? Lynn's voice held something that might have been horror. We have weapons for every possible scenario, Collins corrected. The nanites are just one option. We also have biological weapons that eat electronics, chemical weapons that dissolve metal, and viral programs that corrupt enemy AI systems. Major Pete Thompson's voice came over the marine frequency. Annihilator, this is Thompson. My boys are ready for boarding operations if you can get us close enough. Collins nodded to his communications officer. Tell the Major we'll provide delivery service in 15 minutes. Lynn's sensors focused on Collins again. You are planning to board enemy vessels during combat? That's lesson 3, Collins said. Sometimes you need to get up close and personal. Our Marines are equipped for combat in hostile environments, against unknown enemy types. They carry weapons designed to kill biological targets, mechanical targets, and energy-based life forms. The alien officer was quiet for a moment. Your species prepared for war against enemies you had never encountered. We prepared for war against every type of enemy we could imagine, Collins corrected. And then we prepared for a few more types we hoped we'd never meet. On the tactical display, the battle was reaching a critical point. The swarm was adapting to human weapons faster now, but they were running out of ships to adapt with. Thousands of enemy vessels had been destroyed, and their perfect coordination was breaking down. "Sir," the weapons officer called out, "enemy formation is attempting to retreat to minimum safe distance." Collins laughed. "No such thing as safe distance from human weapons. Helm, pursuit course. All ships, the enemy is trying to run. Don't let them." The human fleet moved after the retreating swarm with grim determination. Where alien fleets might have been content to drive off the enemy, humans had learned a different lesson from their long history of warfare. Lesson 4, Collins explained to Lynn as they chased the enemy across space. Never let a dangerous enemy escape if you can help it. They'll just come back stronger and better prepared. The USS Harbinger launched another wave of combat drones, these ones equipped with faster engines for pursuit operations. Captain Adams wasn't going to let any swarm vessel reach the edge of the system. "Your tactical doctrine seems focused on complete annihilation of the enemy," Lynn observed. "That's because it is," Collins agreed. "We don't fight wars to win points or make statements. We fight wars to make sure the threat can never threaten us again." A group of swarm vessels tried to fight their way out of the system by concentrating their fire on a single human destroyer. The ship's armor held under the bombardment, designed specifically to withstand focused attacks. Collins opened a channel to all human ships. "This is Annihilator. Enemy is concentrating fire on the Franklin. All ships provide support." Within seconds, every human vessel in range was firing on the swarm ships attacking the destroyer. The enemy found themselves on the receiving end of the same concentrated fire doctrine they had tried to use. The difference was that human weapons were designed for exactly this kind of focused assault. The swarm ships were destroyed before they could complete their attack. The Franklin reports. "Minor damage," the communications officer announced. "They're requesting ammunition resupply. Tell them to dock with supply ship Beta 7 after we finish cleaning up these stragglers." Collins turned back to Lynn. "That's lesson 5. We take care of our own, and we make sure our ships can take damage and keep fighting." The alien officer's form had been still for several minutes. "Commander Collins, I begin to understand why the Council assigned human forces to support roles. You do not fight like other species in the galaxy." "No, we don't," Collins agreed. "We fight like a species that spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare before we ever left our home planet." The last group of swarm vessels was attempting to escape toward the outer system. Collins watched his tactical display with satisfaction as human ships moved to intercept them. "Lynn, want to know the most important lesson we learned from all those wars on Earth?" "Yes, Commander." The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened just 12 hours after the battle's end. The same chamber that had dismissed human capabilities now buzzed with urgent whispers and desperate questions. Admiral Kevin Martinez entered to find every species representative present, their earlier arrogance replaced by confusion and desperate curiosity. High Commander Zexthul's crystalline form flickered with agitated patterns as Martinez took his seat. "Admiral, we demand an explanation. How did your primitive fleet succeed where our most advanced technology failed?" Chairman Vexhigh's energy form pulsed with barely controlled emotion. "The battle recordings show impossible results. Swarm, vessels that adapted to our quantum disruptors and reality anchors, were destroyed by simple kinetic weapons. This should not be possible." Martinez remained calm, his hands folded on the table before him. Commander Lisa Brooks sat beside him, her expression carefully neutral. Both humans had prepared for this moment for years. Honored delegates, Martinez began, his voice carrying across the chamber. You asked how we succeeded. The answer is simple. You developed your military technology for exploration and defense. We developed ours for war. The Corvin representative's mechanical translator made harsh clicking sounds. Elaborate. Our gravitational weapons can compress matter to singular densities. How do metal projectiles compare to such power? Brooks activated a holographic display showing weapon effectiveness charts from the recent battle. Your gravitational weapons are incredibly powerful against stationary targets or enemies that fight at long range, but they require significant charging time and energy expenditure. She highlighted the swarm's adaptation patterns. The enemy learned to counter your exotic weapons by studying their energy signatures and quantum effects. They couldn't adapt to kinetic weapons because there's nothing to adapt to. Mass times acceleration equals force. That's not exotic physics. That's basic reality. The Zellarian delegate's liquid metal form rippled with agitation. But surely you could not have known the swarm would adapt to energy weapons. How did you prepare for this specific threat? Martinez allowed himself a small smile. We didn't prepare for this specific threat. We prepared for every threat. He stood and activated his own holographic display. Images of human military history filled the chamber. Ancient battles fought with spears and swords. Medieval sieges with catapults and crossbows. Modern conflicts with firearms and explosives. For over 3,000 years, humanity has been perfecting the art of warfare. We fought each other across every terrain, in every environment, with every conceivable weapon type. We learned to counter energy weapons before we ever encountered them. The B display showed human weapons development. When we achieved spaceflight and made contact with other species, we studied your military technology carefully. We noticed that most galactic civilizations developed similar approaches: energy-based weapons, exotic physics, elegant solutions that worked within your understanding of the universe. Admiral Yexmore of the Crystalline Defense Fleet leaned forward. Are you saying you deliberately chose inferior technology? Inferior? Brooks laughed, but there was no humor in it. Respected Admiral, your energy weapons require exotic matter, quantum processing, and enormous power generation. Our railguns require metal and electricity. Which one works better when your enemy starts jamming your power systems or corrupting your quantum processors? She brought up technical specifications. A tungsten penetrator moving at relativistic speed doesn't care about energy shields, adaptive armor, or quantum barriers. It's just a piece of metal that happens to be moving very fast. You can't adapt to physics. The Altarian High Commander's rainbow patterns flickered rapidly. But your ships, they appear so crude compared to our designs. No elegant curves, no integration with natural forces. Martinez's expression hardened. Our ships look crude because they're designed for one purpose: to fight and win wars. Your vessels are built for exploration, diplomacy, scientific research, and combat as a secondary consideration. He gestured toward images of human warships. Every cubic meter of space on a human military vessel is dedicated to weapons, ammunition, armor, or the systems that support them. We don't have art galleries or cultural centers or diplomatic suites. We have guns and more guns and the fuel to power them. Chairman Vexhi's energy form shifted colors rapidly. You are describing a civilization devoted entirely to warfare. This is disturbing. Not entirely to warfare, Martinez corrected, but we never forgot that warfare exists. While your species developed incredible technologies for peaceful purposes, we spent equal effort ensuring we could defend ourselves against any conceivable threat. Commander Betty Walsh, the human fleet's chief engineer, joined the presentation. She had been waiting in the outer chamber for this moment. Honored delegates, Walsh began. Every human military vessel carries weapon systems designed to counter specific alien technologies. Our electromagnetic pulse warheads were developed after studying Corvin gravitational sensors. Our nanite swarms were designed to consume the organic hull materials used by several species. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. You developed weapons specifically to fight us? The hegemony war leader growled through his translator. We developed weapons to fight anyone who might threaten humanity, Walsh replied evenly. That included potential alien threats, yes, but also rogue AI systems, biological plagues, energy-based life forms, and threats we hadn't encountered yet. She activated another display showing human weapons research. For every type of alien technology we encountered, we asked ourselves, how would we counter this in combat? Then we built those countermeasures. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Brown stepped forward from the observer section. His presence in full military dress uniform made several alien delegates shift nervously. The psychological warfare aspect was equally important, Brown stated. We deliberately appeared technologically inferior to encourage underestimation. While you dismissed our capabilities, we were studying yours. He activated a tactical display showing ship positions. Our true military fleet comprises vessels like the USS Ragnarok and USS Apocalypse. They remain in deep space, ready for threats, like the Void Swarm. What you saw today was just our expeditionary force. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Several delegates began speaking at once in various alien languages. Chairman Vex High called for order. Admiral Martinez, are you telling this council that humanity has been deceiving us about your military capabilities? We've been careful about revealing the full extent of our capabilities, Martinez admitted. We joined the galactic community as peaceful explorers and traders, but we never stopped being human. He gestured toward the battle recordings still, playing on the chamber's displays. Today you saw what happens when humanity fights without restraint. We used weapons designed by a species that has been fighting wars since before we discovered fire. The Corvin delegate's mechanical voice carried what might have been fear. How extensive are your hidden military assets? Brooks consulted her datapad. Currently, humanity maintains approximately 15,000 military vessels of destroyer, class or larger. Our shipyards can produce another 1,000 vessels per month if needed. We have weapons stockpiles sufficient for extended conflict against multiple galactic powers simultaneously. The numbers were staggering. Every species in the chamber realized they had been living alongside a military powerhouse that could potentially challenge the entire galaxy. Why reveal this now? High Commander Zexthul asked quietly. Martinez stood once more, his expression grave. Because the Void Swarm you saw today was a scouting force. Our deep space monitors are detecting larger fleets approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The real war is just beginning. He looked around the chamber, meeting the optical sensors and visual organs of every delegate. You can continue fighting with elegant energy weapons and hope they work better against the next wave, or you can accept that sometimes the best solution to a complex problem is to hit it very hard with a large piece of metal. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates conferred with their governments. The political landscape of the galaxy had just shifted fundamentally. Brooks leaned over to Martinez. Think they'll accept our help willingly now? Martinez watched the panicked conversations around them. Lisa, they're going to beg us to teach them everything we know. For the first time since joining the galactic community, humanity no longer needed to hide their true nature. The galaxy had learned that the species they'd dismissed as primitive were actually the most dangerous predators in known space. And fortunately for everyone else, humanity was on their side. 6 months after the Void Swarm's defeat, Admiral Kevin Martinez stood in his new office overlooking the construction yards of Nexus Prime. The title on his door read, Supreme Allied Commander, a position that hadn't existed before humanity proved their military worth. Outside his window, the greatest construction project in galactic history was taking place. Alien shipyards that had once produced elegant exploration vessels now built weapons of war under human supervision. The transformation was remarkable and slightly unsettling. Admiral, Commander Lisa Brooks entered carrying a datapad. The latest production reports from the Altarian crystal forges. Martinez accepted the report and smiled at the numbers. 15,000 kinetic penetrators this month. Not bad for a species that didn't believe in metal weapons 6 months ago. Brooks sat down across from his desk. Sir, the irony isn't lost on anyone. The same species that mocked our primitive weapons are now begging us to teach them how to build railguns. Through the office's communications system, they could hear voices from the adjacent conference room where Captain Danny Foster was conducting another training session. His voice carried the patient tone of someone explaining basic concepts to eager students. The key to effective kinetic weapons is understanding that mass and velocity are equally important, Foster was saying. A small projectile moving very fast can be just as effective as a large projectile moving slower. Martinez activated his desk display to watch the session. The room was filled with alien military officers taking careful notes. High Commander Zexthal sat in the front row, his crystalline form flickering with concentration as he studied human weapons diagrams. How many species have requested human military advisors? Martinez asked. All of them, Brooks replied. Even the hegemony, and they've been the dominant military power for 3 centuries. Their war leader actually apologized for calling our tactics primitive. The transformation had been swift once the galaxy understood what they were dealing with. Species that had dismissed humanity now competed for access to human military, technology, and training. Trade agreements suddenly favored Earth in ways that would have been unthinkable before the battle. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Chairman Vex High's energy form appeared in holographic projection above Martinez's desk. Admiral Martinez, I trust the construction projects are proceeding satisfactorily. Very well, Chairman. The new hybrid ships should be ready for field testing within 2 months. The hybrid vessels represented a compromise between human and alien technology. Human kinetic weapons and armor systems combined with alien faster-than-light drives and sensors. The result was ships more effective than either species could build alone. Excellent. I have concerning news from our deep space monitoring stations. Martinez straightened in his chair. The larger swarm fleets? Confirmed. Our sensors are detecting massive gravitational distortions approaching from 3 different vectors. The enemy appears to be learning from their initial defeat. Brooks pulled up tactical displays on the office's main screen. Red markers indicated the approaching threats. The numbers were sobering. Millions of enemy contacts spread across 3 separate fleets. How long until they arrive? Martinez asked. Approximately 4 months until the first fleet reaches the outer systems. Martinez studied the tactical situation. 3 different approach vectors meant the enemy was trying to divide Allied forces. Standard military doctrine suggested they were dealing with a more sophisticated opponent than the first swarm. Chairman, are the other species ready for coordinated operations using human tactics? Vex High's energy form pulsed with what Martinez had learned to recognize as uncertainty. Training proceeds, but cultural adaptation is challenging. Many species struggle with human concepts of warfare. That was an understatement. Humanity's approach to combat was fundamentally different from galactic norms. Where other species saw warfare as a regrettable necessity, humans viewed it as a complex art form that required constant study and improvement. Captain Helen Wright's voice came over the communications system from another training room. No. You don't fire at the enemy ship. You fire at where the enemy ship will be when your projectile arrives. Leading your target is basic gunnery. Martinez switched the display to Wright's classroom. She was working with Corvin gunners who were struggling with the concept of predictive targeting. Their gravitational weapons had always locked onto targets automatically. The computer can calculate firing solutions, one of the Corvin officers protested. What happens when the enemy jams your computer? Wright replied patiently. Human gunners learn to calculate firing solutions manually. Every human weapons officer can hit a moving target using nothing but mathematics and instinct. Brooks shook her head. It's going to take years to bring other species up to human combat standards. We don't have years, Martinez replied. We have 4 months. He opened a channel to all human ship commanders throughout the system. Faces appeared on his display. Foster from the training center, Wright from the gunnery range, Collins from the weapons testing facility. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. 3 swarm fleets approaching on different vectors. Estimated arrival in 4 months. Our alien allies are improving, but they're not ready for coordinated operations against a sophisticated enemy. Captain Collins spoke first. Sir, recommendation. We stop trying to train them like human crews and start integrating them into human command structures. Explain. Put human officers in command of mixed crews. Use alien personnel for their specialties. Altarian energy, management, Corvin gravitational sensors, Zolarian quantum processors. But keep humans in tactical command positions. Martinez considered the proposal. It made military sense, but the political implications were staggering. Essentially, they would be asking other species to subordinate their military forces to human command. Chairman Vexhai, Martinez addressed the hologram. What's your assessment of this approach? The energy being flickered through several color changes before responding. Admiral, 6 months ago such a suggestion would have caused diplomatic incidents across the galaxy. Today we are facing extinction if we lose the next battle. The projection paused. I will present the proposal to the full council. Given our current situation, I believe they will accept human military leadership. After the transmission ended, Brooks turned to Martinez. Sir, do you really think we can coordinate fleets from dozens of different species into an effective fighting force? Martinez looked out the window at the construction yards where human and alien engineers worked side by side. Ships that looked like no design either species had built alone took shape in the zero-gravity factories. Lisa, 3 months ago, the galaxy thought we were primitive. Now they're asking us to save them from an enemy that adapts to everything they throw at it. He smiled grimly. We've been preparing for this moment since we first left Earth. A priority alert flashed on his desk display. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Brown's face appeared on screen from the intelligence center. Admiral, we're receiving long-range transmissions from the approaching swarm fleets. The enemy is broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Put it through. The message that filled the office was unlike anything they had received from the first swarm. Instead of mechanical coordination signals, this transmission carried what could only be described as intelligence. Biological entities of this galaxy, the synthesized voice began. We have analyzed your defensive capabilities. Your kinetic weapons present an interesting challenge. We are curious to test our adaptations against your primitive projectile systems. The transmission cut off, leaving an ominous silence. Brooks felt a chill run down her spine. Sir, they're not just adapting to our weapons. They're learning to think like we do. Martinez nodded grimly. Then it's a good thing we've been thinking like them since the first battle ended. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, all commands. This is Admiral Martinez. The enemy is coming back and they're coming prepared. But they're about to learn something important about humanity. He paused, looking out at the massive fleet taking shape in the construction yards. We don't just adapt to threats. We prepare for threats we haven't even encountered yet. When the swarm arrives, they're going to find out what happens when you give humans 4 months to prepare for war. The next few months would determine whether humanity's reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous species was truly deserved. Martinez was confident they wouldn't disappoint. After all, humanity had been preparing for this war long before they ever left their home planet.